My name is Harold Peterson. I'm 65 years old, and what I'm about to tell you changed everything I thought I knew about my family. I was lying in a hospital bed at Mercy General when my life turned upside down. The steady beeping of the heart monitor had become my constant companion for the past 3 days since my accident. My daughter Rebecca had insisted I stay for observation after I fell down the stairs at home. Stairs I'd navigated safely for over 30 years. That Wednesday afternoon, as I drifted in and out of a medication-induced haze, the monitor beside my bed suddenly beeped differently. I opened my eyes, expecting to see a nurse rushing in to check my vitals. Instead, I saw something impossible on the screen where my heart rhythm should have been. A message, in plain text. Harold, don't trust Rebecca. She pushed you. I saw everything. Nurse, Emma. I froze, my own heartbeat now pounding in my ears louder than the machine could register. The door to my room opened, and there was Rebecca, 42 years old, my only daughter, carrying a cup of what she said was my favorite tea. Behind her stood my son-in-law, Martin, watching me with an intensity I'd never noticed before. "Dad, you're awake. How are you feeling?" Rebecca asked, her smile not quite reaching her eyes as she approached the bed. I glanced at the monitor. The message was gone, replaced by the normal rhythm of my heartbeat. But what Rebecca didn't know, as she handed me that tea, was that I had just received a warning that would save my life, and that 3 witnesses in the adjoining room had seen everything through the observation window. Life hadn't always been this way with Rebecca. I remember when she was a little girl with pigtails and a gap-toothed smile, running to me every evening when I came home from the accounting firm. "Daddy's home," she'd shout, throwing herself into my arms without reservation. Those were beautiful days. After all these years, I've kept all her handmade Father's Day cards in a special box in my study. "World's best dad," they proclaimed in crayon and glitter. She meant it then. I believe she truly did. Our Sunday dinners were a tradition that continued even after my wife, Martha, passed away from breast cancer 15 years ago. Rebecca would come over with freshly baked rolls, Martha's recipe, and we'd sit at the old oak table, sharing stories and planning the future. "Dad, I don't know what I'd do without you," she often said in those early years after her mother died. We leaned on each other, finding strength in our shared grief. I never remarried. Rebecca was my family, my world. When she met Martin 8 years ago, I was happy for her. She'd been alone too long, focused on her career as a financial advisor. Martin seemed like a decent man, quiet, hard-working, always respectful to me. I welcomed him into our small family with open arms, and our Sunday dinners expanded to include him. "You've given Rebecca something I couldn't," I told him, at their wedding. "A new beginning. Thank you for making my daughter happy again." We embraced, and I truly believed our family was whole once more. "I've never seen 2 people who care for each other the way you and Rebecca do," my neighbor Gladys once observed. "That kind of father-daughter bond is rare these days. You raised her right, Harold." I never imagined those days of trust and love were numbered. How could I have known what was brewing beneath the surface of our seemingly perfect family? An account. "I want you to have a beautiful home to start your family." The $60,000 meant postponing my own retirement by 3 years, but seeing their joy made it worthwhile. 2 years later, when Martin's investment firm faced trouble during the economic downturn, they came to me again. "It's just temporary, Dad," Rebecca explained, as I wrote them a check for $25,000. "We'll pay you back as soon as Martin's company stabilizes." Then came the emergencies. $12,000 when their roof needed replacing, $8,000 when Martin needed dental surgery, $15,000 when they wanted to invest in a vacation property, that was too good to pass up. Each month, I also sent them $1,500 to help with the bills, money that initially was meant to be temporary, but somehow became an expected part of their budget. "You've been so generous, Harold," Martin once said during a Sunday dinner. "Rebecca and I promise we'll take care of you when you're older. You'll never have to worry about anything." I believe them. Why wouldn't I? All told, over the past 10 years, I'd given Rebecca and Martin more than $380,000, most of my retirement savings, and a second mortgage on my house. "When the time comes," Rebecca assured me last Christmas, "you can sell your house and move in with us. We have that perfect guest suite, and you'll never be alone." The house, my last significant asset, was worth about $425,000. It was the final piece of my financial puzzle, and I had already changed my will to leave everything to Rebecca. After all, she was my only child, my future, the one who'd promised to care for me in my old age. How blind I had been. Looking back, I can see the signs had been there for months, perhaps even years. Small moments that seemed insignificant at the time now took on a sinister quality in my memory. 6 months ago, during a Sunday dinner, Rebecca casually mentioned my forgetfulness. "Dad, that's the 3rd time you've told that story about your fishing trip with Uncle Frank," she said, with a laugh that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Are you sure you're writing everything down like the doctor suggested?" I hadn't seen any doctor who suggested I write things down. When I mentioned this, Rebecca exchanged a look with Martin. "Remember, Dad, at your physical last month, Dr. Hansen said it might help with your memory lapses." I'd seen Dr. Hansen for my annual physical, but we'd never discussed memory issues. Still, I second-guessed myself. Had I forgotten the conversation? Was Rebecca right? A month later, I noticed Rebecca going through my mail when I returned from the bathroom. "Just helping you organize," she explained, quickly putting down an envelope from my bank. Later, I found several financial statements missing from my desk drawer. "You know," Martin suggested during their next visit, "it might be easier if Rebecca had access to your accounts, just to keep an eye on things and help with bill payments." When I hesitated, Rebecca added, "Dad, remember last month when you forgot to pay the electric bill? It's not a big deal, but we worry about you living here alone." I didn't recall missing any payments, but again, I questioned my own memory. Mrs. Abernathy from next door stopped me in the yard one afternoon. "Harold, I've been meaning to ask if you're feeling all right. Your daughter mentioned you've been having some episodes. Said sometimes you get confused about where you are." "She said that?" I asked, genuinely shocked. Oh dear, I hope I haven't spoken out of turn. She seemed very concerned, even asked if I'd mind keeping an eye on you and calling her if I noticed anything unusual. Rebecca had been telling the neighbors I was losing my mind. 3 weeks before my accident, I overheard Rebecca on the phone in my kitchen. "The house needs work, but the location is perfect. Yes, once we sell it, we should clear enough for both the condo in Florida and paying off our mortgage. No, he doesn't need to know yet. I'm thinking another month or 2 at most." When she saw me standing in the doorway, she quickly ended the call. "Just talking to a client about property values," she explained, with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. The most disturbing incident happened just days before my fall. I found Rebecca in my study, going through the drawer where I kept my will and financial documents. "Just helping you organize," she said, the same excuse as before. That night, I called my old friend Edward, a retired attorney. "I think I need to make some changes to my will," I told him. "Can we meet next week?" "Of course, Harold. Is everything all right?" "I'm not sure," I admitted, "but I want to be prepared just in case." I never made it to that meeting. 2 days later, I was lying at the bottom of my stairs with a broken hip, being told by my daughter that I must have tripped and fallen, but now staring at the heart monitor that had momentarily displayed that impossible message, I wondered if Mrs. Abernathy from next door had seen something through her window that day, something that would explain why a nurse named Emma would warn me not to trust my only child. Perhaps a neurological evaluation would be appropriate, Dr. Winters suggested, making a note in my chart. Excellent idea, Rebecca agreed, before I could respond. And regarding his finances, I've been helping him manage those. Do you have the paperwork for me to sign medical decisions while he's recovering? I can make my own decisions, I protested. Rebecca patted my hand condescendingly. Dad, you're on pain medication. Let me handle the complicated stuff. After Dr. Winters left, Rebecca pulled out a folder of documents. Just some paperwork to make things easier while you recover, she explained, placing them on the tray table. Power of attorney, healthcare proxy, just temporary until you're back on your feet. I pretended fatigue, saying I'd look at them later. As soon as Rebecca left to get some coffee, I examined the papers. They weren't temporary at all. They would grant her complete control over my medical decisions, financial affairs, and even included papers for something called a conservatorship determination. I hid them under my pillow. When Martin visited that evening, he brought up my house unprompted. Rebecca and I were thinking, it might be time to consider selling. The stairs are dangerous, and the maintenance is too much for you. I'm quite attached to my home, I replied cautiously. Of course you are, Martin said with forced sympathy. But Rebecca's been researching some wonderful senior communities. Meadowbrook Gardens has an opening next month. Very exclusive, beautiful facilities. Later, I overheard them in the hallway outside my room. He's being stubborn, Rebecca whispered harshly. Did he sign anything? Not yet, Martin replied. But we need to move quickly. Edward called asking about him. Apparently they had some meetings scheduled. I'll take care of Edward. Dad can't go home. It's too risky. The documents need to be signed before Dr. Harris conducts the competency evaluation on Thursday. And if he refuses? He won't, Rebecca said firmly. One way or another, he'll sign. The hip fracture was actually convenient timing. We just need to convince everyone his mind is going too. I felt sick listening to them. My own daughter was systematically working to take everything from me, my independence, my home, my dignity, my money. And from what I'd overheard, she was planning something even more sinister for Thursday. I needed to find Nurse Emma, and I needed to do it before I was declared incompetent and lost everything. That night, I pressed the call button and asked the night nurse, not Emma, for a notepad and pen, claiming I wanted to write down my medication schedule. Once alone, I scribbled a note. Need to speak with Nurse Emma urgently. Matter of life and death. Please keep confidential. When the breakfast attendant came in the morning, I slipped her the note along with a $20 bill from the wallet Rebecca had left in my drawer. For Nurse Emma only, I whispered. 2 hours later, a young woman in scrubs quietly entered my room. She closed the door behind her and approached my bed. Mr. Peterson, I'm Emma Campbell, she said, her voice low. You wanted to see me? The message on the monitor, I said without preamble. Was that you? She glanced nervously at the door. Not here. It's not safe to talk here. She pretended to check my IV, then whispered, Your daughter has been asking about your medication schedule and whether you're ever left alone. She's been very interested in your pain medication doses. Why did you warn me? I asked. Because I saw what happened at your house, she said quietly. I live across the street from you, the blue house with the porch swing. I was looking out my window when your daughter... The door opened, and Rebecca walked in. Emma smoothly transitioned to checking my blood pressure. "Everything okay in here?" Rebecca asked, her eyes darting between us. "Just routine checks," Emma replied professionally. "Your father's vitals are improving nicely." After Emma left, Rebecca stayed close, barely leaving my side all day. But in a moment when she stepped out to take a call, a hospital volunteer delivered a magazine to my room. Hidden inside was a note. "Mr. Peterson, I saw Rebecca push you down the stairs. I have it on my security camera. I installed one after a package theft. 2 other neighbors have concerns. Martin has been asking about selling your house for months. Be careful what you eat, drink, check your medications. We're gathering evidence. Delete these texts after reading." Below was a cell phone number. That night, after Rebecca finally left, and the night nurse helped me to the bathroom, I used the room phone to call the number. "Emma Campbell," she answered. "It's Harold Peterson. Tell me everything." What Emma revealed next confirmed my worst fears. She wasn't just my neighbor. She was also a friend of my late wife's niece, Jenny. She had recognized Rebecca from family photos Jenny had shown her, and had been troubled by conversations she'd overheard while working at Meadowbrook Gardens, the senior living facility Martin had mentioned. "I work part-time at Meadowbrook to supplement my nurse's salary," Emma explained. 3 months ago, your daughter and son-in-law toured the facility. They specifically asked about the memory care unit, the locked ward for patients with dementia, and whether residents could have visitors screened for their own protection. "I don't have dementia," I said firmly. "I know," Emma replied, "but they've been setting the groundwork. They told the director you were experiencing rapid cognitive decline and asked about the process for having someone committed involuntarily. Can they do that? With enough documentation from doctors, yes. And from what I've gathered from my colleague in Dr. Harris's office, your daughter has been speaking with him for weeks, documenting supposed incidents of confusion, paranoia, and dangerous behavior." I felt cold all over. "What about the security camera footage?" "I have it," Emma confirmed. "You were standing at the top of your stairs when Rebecca came up behind you. The angle isn't perfect, but it clearly shows her pushing you, then waiting almost 2 minutes before calling 911. "Why would she do this?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "Your house, Mr. Peterson, and whatever money you have left. My friend Jenny mentioned that Rebecca has been talking about receiving a substantial inheritance soon. She's already contacted a realtor about listing your property." I didn't want to believe it, but I knew it was true. My own daughter had tried to kill me, and when that failed, she was working to have me declared incompetent so she could control everything I owned. "I need help," I admitted. "I can't fight this alone." "You're not alone," Emma assured me. "Jenny is contacting your friend Edward tonight. And Mr. Peterson, don't sign anything, and don't eat or drink anything Rebecca brings you. We need to get you safely discharged before Thursday's evaluation." After hanging up, I lay in the dark, coming to terms with the betrayal of my only child. My heart ached more painfully than my broken hip. All those years of sacrifice, all that love, and in the end, to Rebecca, I was just an obstacle to wealth, a problem to be eliminated. I thought about our Sunday dinners, the Father's Day cards, the promises to care for me in my old age. All lies. But now, at least, I knew the truth. And knowledge, even painful knowledge, is power. If you've ever experienced betrayal by someone you loved, you know the particular agony I felt that night. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever discovered someone close to you wasn't who you thought they were? How did you handle it? Edward had always been thorough. It was what made him an excellent attorney before his retirement. "What do you need from me?" I asked. "Documentation of your financial support to Rebecca and Martin, dates, amounts, whether they were gifts or loans, and any evidence of recent attempts to access your accounts or pressure you about your house." While Rebecca was at lunch, Edward arranged for a paralegal from his old firm to visit me, posing as a volunteer with books for patients. The young woman slipped me a burner phone and a small notebook, then took detailed notes of everything I could remember about Rebecca and Martin's financial manipulations. "Mr. Peterson," she said before leaving, "we've pulled your bank records. The financial abuse is extensive. Your daughter has been writing checks from your account for months. We found over $45,000 in unauthorized transfers since January." I felt a wave of anger and betrayal. How? I never gave her access. "She's been forging your signature. We have the bank's verification on that." Later that afternoon, Emma came to take my vitals. While checking my blood pressure, she slipped me a USB drive. "Security footage," she whispered. "And I've documented every conversation I've overheard about you between your daughter and the doctors." When Rebecca returned that evening, she brought a cup of tea and some cookies. "Your favorite," she said with a smile that now seemed sinister rather than loving. "I'm still feeling nauseated," I told her. "Maybe later." She frowned slightly but set them aside. Then she pulled out the folder of documents again. "Dad, we really need to get these signed before your evaluation tomorrow. It's just temporary, to help with your care." "What evaluation?" I asked, pretending ignorance. "Just a standard cognitive assessment," she said dismissively. "Nothing to worry about. Now let's go through these forms." I feigned fatigue, closing my eyes. "I'm just so tired, Rebecca. Maybe tomorrow." "It can't wait," she insisted, her voice taking on an edge. "The doctor needs these before he can properly assess you." I opened my eyes and looked directly at her. "What's the rush? If it's just temporary." For a moment, I saw something cold and calculating in my daughter's eyes. Then she composed herself. "Fine. Rest now. But first thing tomorrow morning, we're getting these signed." After she left, I examined the tea she'd brought. Acting on impulse, I poured a small amount into a specimen cup I'd requested earlier, sealing it carefully. If my suspicions were correct, Rebecca might be doing more than just manipulating me. She might be actively drugging me to make me appear confused. That night, I used the burner phone to text Edward. "Suspect medication tampering. Needs sample tested." His response came quickly. "Detective Simmons will visit tomorrow at 7 a.m. before Rebecca arrives. Have everything ready." For the first time since seeing that message on the monitor, I felt a glimmer of hope. Rebecca had resources and had been planning this for months, but now I had allies too. The truth would come to light. I just needed to stay alert and alive until morning. As the evening progressed, Rebecca's behavior grew increasingly controlling. She instructed the nursing staff that I was confused and shouldn't be allowed to make phone calls without supervision. She questioned every medication the nurses brought, insisting on knowing exactly what each pill was for and how it might affect my mental state. "My father gets very paranoid on certain medications," I overheard her telling the night nurse. "If he says anything strange about me or my husband, please understand it's the medication talking." When Dr. Jensen stopped by for an evening check, Rebecca immediately took control of the conversation. "He's been having episodes of confusion," she told him before I could speak. Earlier today, he accused the breakfast attendant of stealing his watch, the watch he hasn't worn in years. This was a complete fabrication. I started to protest, but Rebecca spoke over me. "See how agitated he gets? This is what we've been dealing with at home, the paranoia, the accusations. It's why we've been considering memory care." Dr. Jensen looked at me sympathetically, making a note in my chart. I realized with horror that every denial on my part was being interpreted as further evidence of confusion. Later, when a young volunteer brought dinner, Rebecca intercepted the tray. "I'll help my father with this," she insisted. "He gets very messy these days." The volunteer looked uncertain. "Hospital policy says I should assist." "I said I'll handle it," Rebecca snapped, her pleasant facade cracking momentarily. After the volunteer left, Rebecca set the tray down and pulled out a small bottle from her purse. "Your special fiber supplement, Dad," she said, sprinkling a white powder into my soup. "Doctor's orders." "I don't take fiber supplements," I said firmly. Rebecca's smile tightened. "Don't be difficult. You've been taking this for months. It helps with your digestion." I refused to touch the soup. Rebecca's expression darkened. "You need to eat, Dad. How will you recover your strength?" "I'm not hungry right now." She leaned in close, her voice dropping to a whisper. "This stubbornness isn't helping your situation. Do you want to end up in a state facility instead of Meadowbrook? Because that can be arranged." It was the first direct threat she'd made, and it chilled me to the bone. My daughter, who I'd raised with love, who I'd sacrificed everything for, was threatening to have me committed if I didn't comply with her wishes. That evening, visitors weren't allowed due to a temporary lockdown after a security incident on another floor. Rebecca was forced to leave, but not before she cornered Dr. Jensen at the nurses' station. "I'm very concerned about tomorrow's evaluation," I overheard her saying. "He's been refusing medication, becoming combative. I'm afraid he might become difficult during the assessment. We can administer a mild sedative before the evaluation if needed," Dr. Jensen suggested. "That would be best," Rebecca agreed. "And make sure Dr. Harris understands the severity of the situation. My husband and I are prepared to take full guardianship immediately." After she left, I used the burner phone to update Edward and Detective Simmons about this new development. The trap was closing around me. Tomorrow they planned to drug me before the evaluation that would determine my competency. I felt like a prisoner awaiting execution, with the clock ticking down to 9 a.m., but I wasn't without resources. Emma slipped into my room during her night shift and secretly adjusted my medical chart to note an allergy to the sedative they planned to administer. "It won't stop them completely," she warned, "but it will force them to use a different protocol, which should buy us time until the detective arrives." I barely slept that night, listening to every footstep in the hallway, wondering if Rebecca might return to ensure I wouldn't be able to defend myself in the morning. The hospital felt less like a place of healing, and more like the scene of an impending crime, one in which I was the intended victim. Edward and a woman I didn't recognize. At 7:15 a.m., my hospital room became the scene of a confrontation that would change everything. Detective Simmons entered first, followed by Edward, the unknown woman, who I later learned was a court-appointed evaluator, and 2 hospital administrators. They were in the middle of explaining the situation when Rebecca arrived, immediately sensing something was wrong. "What's going on here?" she demanded, looking from face to face. "Why are there police in my father's room?" "Ms. Winters," Detective Simmons said formally, "we're here to investigate allegations of elder abuse, attempted murder, and financial exploitation." Rebecca's face went pale, then flushed with anger. "This is ridiculous. My father is mentally incompetent. He's been having paranoid delusions for months." Dr. Winters, who had been summoned by the hospital administrators, stepped forward. "Actually, there's no evidence of cognitive impairment in Mr. Peterson's records prior to his recent admission. The only documentation suggesting memory issues comes from your reports." Rebecca turned to me, her expression a mixture of fury and desperation. "Dad, Tell them this is all a misunderstanding. You know I've only been trying to help you." It was the moment of truth. In front of 7 witnesses, the detective, Edward, the court evaluator, 2 hospital administrators, Dr. Winters, and the nurse, I faced my daughter. "Rebecca," I said, my voice stronger than it had been in days, "I know what you did. I know you pushed me down the stairs. I know about the drugged tea, the forged checks, the plans to sell my house, and your attempts to have me committed." "He's delusional," she shouted, looking around desperately for support. "This proves exactly what I've been saying." Detective Simmons placed a laptop on the tray table and turned it to face the room. "Ms. Winters, we have video evidence of you pushing your father down the stairs at his residence." He pressed play. The security camera footage from Emma's house played clearly. There I was, at the top of my stairs, and there was Rebecca, coming up, behind me, looking around furtively, then deliberately pushing me with both hands. The footage showed her watching as I tumbled down, then checking her watch before finally calling 911. The room fell silent as the video ended. Rebecca's face had gone completely white. That's been doctored," she stammered. "Someone's trying to frame me." "We also have evidence of financial exploitation," Edward added, opening a folder. "Forged checks totaling over $45,000 in the past 6 months, unauthorized access to Mr. Peterson's accounts, and documented attempts to gain power of attorney under false pretenses." The court evaluator stepped forward. "And I've reviewed the substance found in the tea sample provided yesterday. It contained high levels of benzodiazepines, far exceeding any prescribed medication." Rebecca's composure cracked entirely. "You don't understand," she screamed, suddenly lunging toward me. "He promised everything would be mine. I've waited years, decades, putting up with his controlling behavior, his constant judgment. That house and money are mine." Detective Simmons intercepted her, grabbing her arms. "Rebecca Winters, you're under arrest for attempted murder, elder abuse, financial exploitation, and forgery." As they led my daughter away, still screaming accusations and threats, I felt no satisfaction, only a profound sadness and a strange sense of clarity. The person I had loved and sacrificed for had been plotting my death. The truth was painful, but it was also freeing. In that moment, surrounded by people who had helped save me from my own daughter's scheme, I made a decision. I would survive this betrayal, and I would rebuild my life, without Rebecca in it. 1 week after Rebecca's arrest, I was discharged from the hospital to a short-term rehabilitation facility, not Meadowbrook Gardens, but a reputable place Edward had thoroughly vetted. Before leaving, I had an important meeting in the hospital conference room. Edward arrived with a portfolio of documents, accompanied by Frank Donovan, a forensic accountant, and Patricia Winters, Rebecca's mother-in-law, and surprisingly, one of my allies in this ordeal. "Harold," Edward began, "we've completed our financial investigation, and I think you'll find the results illuminating." Frank opened his laptop. "Mr. Peterson, your daughter didn't just want your house and your visible savings. Our investigation revealed she was after much more." He turned the screen toward me, showing a comprehensive financial overview. While Rebecca had been scheming to get my house worth $425,000 and my known savings of approximately $180,000, she had been completely unaware of my actual financial position. "Your late wife Martha was quite the investor," Frank explained. "The technology stocks she purchased in the early 1990s have grown exponentially. The portfolio she established and that you've maintained is currently valued at approximately $3.2 million. I nodded slowly. Martha had always handled our investments, and after her death, I'd simply left everything as she had arranged it, making minimum withdrawals only when necessary. I'd never discussed these assets with Rebecca, believing they would be hers eventually anyway. Additionally, Frank continued, the rental property in Martha's family name that generates $4,500 monthly has been accumulating in a separate account, now totaling $378,000. Patricia Winters spoke up. Harold, Martin had no idea about any of this. He believed what Rebecca told him, that you had only the house and maybe $200,000 in savings. I looked at her questioningly. Martin has been cooperating with the investigation, Edward explained. It appears Rebecca kept him in the dark about the extent of her plans. He knew she was pushing for you to sell the house and move into assisted living, but he claims he had no knowledge of the drugging or the incident on the stairs. He's filed for divorce, Patricia added quietly. The evidence of what Rebecca did. He couldn't stay with her after that. I felt a complex mix of emotions, vindication that my financial prudence had ironically saved me, as Rebecca would have likely killed me outright if she'd known the true extent of my assets, and sadness that greed had corrupted my daughter so completely. There's more, Edward said. We've discovered Rebecca has been systematically stealing from other older clients in her financial advisory practice. The prosecutor has identified at least 5 other victims, all of whom believed Rebecca was managing their investments while she was actually embezzling their funds. How much did she take? I asked. Preliminary estimates suggest close to $1.4 million over 6 years, Frank answered. She's facing multiple federal charges in addition to the attempted murder and elder abuse charges. What happens now? I asked. Edward laid out a clear path forward. My assets were being secured with new protections. The power of attorney I'd granted to Rebecca years ago had been revoked, and a restraining order would prevent her from contacting me during the legal proceedings. And Harold, Edward added, Emma Campbell has been instrumental in this case. Without her video evidence and testimony, we might not have been able to build such a strong case. As they discussed the details of Rebecca's crimes and my surprising financial portfolio, I felt a weight lifting. For months, I had been questioning my own memory, my own sanity, as Rebecca systematically undermined my confidence and independence. Now the truth was laid bare. I wasn't losing my mind. I was being deliberately manipulated by someone I trusted completely. The true extent of my wealth was significant. Nearly $4 million in total assets, far more than Rebecca had imagined in her greedy calculations. The irony wasn't lost on me. If she had simply waited, been patient and loving, all of it would have eventually been hers through legitimate means. Instead, her impatience and malice had cost her everything. What will happen to her? I asked. Edward sighed. Given the video evidence, the financial crimes, and the testimony from multiple witnesses, she's facing 15 to 25 years. The prosecutor is pursuing maximum penalties because of the premeditated nature of the crimes. It was difficult to reconcile the daughter I had raised with the criminal being described. Where had I gone wrong? Had I indulged her too much? Had Martha's death twisted something inside her? Or had the seeds of this betrayal always been there, waiting for the right conditions to grow? You can't blame yourself, Patricia said, seeming to read my thoughts. Martin is devastated, too. He keeps asking himself how he didn't see it, but Rebecca was extremely convincing. She fooled all of us, I acknowledged, for years. As the meeting concluded, Frank provided me with new account information, secure passwords, and a comprehensive plan to protect my assets moving forward. I would never again be financially vulnerable to anyone. A hard lesson learned at a terrible cost. A calculated long-term plot to exploit, control, and ultimately eliminate Harold Peterson for financial gain. Emma Campbell testified about what she had witnessed and the message she had sent to my monitor, a risky intervention that had saved my life. The IT specialist from the hospital confirmed that the system had indeed been accessed, adding credibility to Emma's account. Dr. Winters presented medical evidence of the benzodiazepines found in my tea sample, explaining how they could have caused confusion, weakness, and potentially fatal complications when combined with my prescribed medications. The forensic accountant detailed Rebecca's systematic theft, not just from me, but from her other victims as well. Bank records showed how she had methodically drained their accounts while providing falsified statements showing non-existent growth. When Martin took the stand, Rebecca visibly tensed. He testified that she had discussed inheriting soon and had pressured him to research care facilities with specific interest in places where residents had limited visitor access. "Did you ever question why your father-in-law needed to be in a memory care unit?" the prosecutor asked. "Rebecca said he was having episodes of confusion and paranoia," Martin replied. "I believed her. She showed me notes she claimed were from his doctor documenting his decline. And were these notes authentic?" "No," Martin admitted. "They were forged. Rebecca created them to convince me and others that Harold was losing his mental capacity." During cross-examination, Rebecca's attorney attempted to portray her as a devoted daughter concerned about her elderly father's well-being, but the evidence was overwhelming. The forged checks, the drugged tea, the security footage. There was no plausible explanation that painted Rebecca as innocent. Then came the moment I had been dreading. My own testimony. As I took the stand, I looked directly at my daughter for the first time in months. Our eyes met briefly before she looked away. Despite everything, I felt a pang of sorrow for the little girl who had once run into my arms at the end of each day. The prosecutor guided me through my testimony gently but thoroughly. The years of financial support I had provided, the gradual escalation of Rebecca's manipulation, the incidents where she had undermined my confidence and autonomy. "Mr. Peterson," Jenkins asked toward the end, "when did you first suspect your daughter might be deliberately trying to harm you?" I took a deep breath. I didn't want to believe it until I saw the message on the hospital monitor. Even then, it seemed impossible that my own child would. My voice broke momentarily. Until that moment, I had always made excuses for her behavior. I thought perhaps I had misunderstood, or that she truly believed she was helping me. "And how do you feel now?" I looked directly at Rebecca again. "I feel profound sadness and a sense of failure, not because of anything I did wrong, but because despite all the love and opportunities I gave her, my daughter chose greed and deception. I failed to see who she really was until it was almost too late." Rebecca's attorney declined to cross-examine me. Perhaps he recognized that challenging my testimony would only make his client appear more callous to the jury. The final blow to Rebecca's defense came when the prosecutor played recordings of her jail phone calls, in which she had told a former colleague, "Once the old man is gone, we'll have access to everything. Just hold on a little longer." After 3 weeks of testimony, the jury deliberated for less than 4 hours before returning with a verdict. Guilty on all counts, including attempted murder, elder abuse, financial exploitation, forgery, and multiple counts of financial fraud related to her other victims. At the sentencing hearing 2 weeks later, Judge Harriman addressed Rebecca directly. "Ms. Winters, the calculated nature of your crimes against your own father, a man who supported you emotionally and financially throughout your life, demonstrates a disturbing lack of empathy and moral character. Your actions were not committed in a moment of passion or desperation, but rather as part of a cold, premeditated plan executed over months, if not years. He continued, "This court has a responsibility to protect society from those who prey on vulnerable individuals, particularly when those individuals are family members who should be able to trust their relatives implicitly. I therefore sentence you to 22 years in state prison with no possibility of parole for 18 years. Rebecca showed no emotion as the sentence was pronounced. As she was led away, she didn't look back at me or acknowledge the other victims in the courtroom. Whatever had driven her to such extremes, whether greed, resentment, or some deeper psychological issue, had consumed the daughter I once knew. Outside the courthouse, surrounded by reporters and other victims seeking closure, I made a brief statement. Today's verdict cannot undo the pain of betrayal, but it does provide a measure of justice. I hope my experience serves as a reminder that elder abuse can come from unexpected sources, even from those we love and trust most. To anyone experiencing manipulation or exploitation, seek help, trust your instincts, and know that you are not alone." As the crowd dispersed, Emma Campbell approached me with tears in her eyes. "Mr. Peterson, I'm so glad justice was served." I took her hand gratefully. "Emma, you saved my life, not just with that message on the monitor, but by having the courage to become involved when many would have looked the other way. Thank you isn't sufficient, but it's all I have to offer." She smiled through her tears. "Actually, there is something more you can offer. Your friendship. After all this is over, I'd like to still visit sometimes. Maybe have coffee on that porch swing I can see from my window." It was the first time I had genuinely smiled in months. I'd like that very much. 2 years after Rebecca's conviction, my life had transformed in ways I never could have anticipated. The rehabilitation facility where I had briefly stayed after my hospitalization had offered me a position on their advisory board, recognizing that my experience as a victim of elder abuse provided valuable insight into their services and policies. I accepted, finding unexpected fulfillment in helping shape programs that would protect others from the manipulation and exploitation I had endured. My accounting background proved useful as I helped review financial safeguards and developed educational materials about recognizing the warning signs of exploitation. Within 18 months, our Safety in Senior Years program had been adopted by 6 other facilities across the state, and we'd received a federal grant to expand our work nationally. "Mr. Peterson, your presentation changed everything for me," a 72-year-old woman told me after one of our workshops. "I've been feeling pressured by my nephew about my house for months, but I was too embarrassed to tell anyone. Today I realized I'm not alone." These moments of connection became the most meaningful parts of my new life. My home, once a place of anxiety and fear, became a sanctuary again. I installed a ramp alongside the stairs where Rebecca had pushed me, transforming what could have been a daily reminder of trauma into a symbol of accessibility and independence. The garden that had been neglected during my recovery now flourished with vibrant roses, Martha's favorite flowers, and vegetables I shared with neighbors. Emma often came over to help with the heavier tasks, bringing her infectious energy and practical wisdom. "You're getting quite good at this gardening business," she teased one afternoon as we planted tomatoes. "Soon you won't need my help at all." "I'll always need good company," I replied, realizing how true those words were. Our friendship had deepened over the months, bridging the 30-year age gap with mutual respect and genuine affection. She introduced me to her book club, where I found a community of thoughtful, engaging people who valued my perspective rather than questioning my competence. We tackled classics and contemporary works alike, our discussions often lasting well into the evening over coffee and homemade desserts. The financial security that Rebecca had coveted allowed me to establish the Martha Peterson Foundation, named after my late wife, dedicated to supporting elderly victims of fraud and abuse. The foundation provided emergency funding, legal advocacy, and educational outreach to seniors and their families. Within its first year, we had helped over 50 seniors recover from financial exploitation and provided legal support to dozens more. "What you're doing is revolutionary," Detective Simmons told me at our first annual fundraiser. "We're seeing more seniors coming forward to report abuse because they know there's support available now." We partnered with 3 area law schools to create a legal clinic, specifically for elder law cases, offering free services to seniors who couldn't afford representation. 2 of my fellow abuse survivors joined the Foundation's board, bringing their unique perspectives to our work. I also reconnected with Jenny, my wife's niece, who had been distanced from our family due to Rebecca's subtle manipulations over the years. Our first reunion was tearful, but healing. "Uncle Harold, I always wondered why you stopped coming to family gatherings," she said, holding my hand tightly. "Rebecca told everyone you were becoming reclusive and preferred to be alone." Learning the truth about how Rebecca had systematically isolated me from extended family was painful, but ultimately healing. Jenny and I established a new tradition of Sunday brunches, often joined by her children who called me Grandpa Harold, despite no biological connection, a title I treasured. Martin occasionally called to check on me, his guilt over his unwitting role in Rebecca's scheme evident in every conversation. I harbored no resentment toward him. He too had been deceived by a master manipulator. He had rebuilt his life in another state, working to make amends by volunteering with organizations that supported elderly independence. "Harold, I'm speaking at a conference next month about recognizing the warning signs of elder abuse from a family member's perspective," he told me during one call. "Would it be okay to share some of our story? I want others to learn from my mistakes." I gave my blessing, believing that every person who heard our story might be another life saved from a similar fate. As for Rebecca, I had not spoken to her since the trial. She made no attempts to contact me, showing no remorse for her actions. The prosecutor occasionally updated me on her prison situation. She had been denied early release considerations due to her lack of accountability, and had made no efforts toward rehabilitation. In her 3rd year of incarceration, she had been caught attempting to manipulate another inmate's elderly parents through elaborate prison correspondence. "Some people can't change," Edward told me when he shared the news. "But you have, Harold. You've turned tragedy into purpose." My health, which had suffered during Rebecca's manipulation, steadily improved. The symptoms that had been induced by her poisoning, the confusion, fatigue, and dizziness, disappeared entirely. At my annual physical, Dr. Winters remarked that my vitals were better than many patients 20 years younger. "Whatever you're doing, keep it up," he encouraged me. "You've got many good years ahead." I joined a senior swimming class at the local YMCA, making new friends and regaining strength I thought I'd lost forever. Twice a week, I volunteered at an elementary school, reading to first graders who were delighted by my dramatic storytelling style. "Mr. Harold's coming today," they would cheer, gathering around as I opened a new adventure. On the 2nd anniversary of that fateful day, when the hospital monitor had displayed Emma's warning message, I hosted a garden party at my home. Edward and his wife, Emma, and her fiancé, a development I had enthusiastically supported, Jenny and her family, Detective Simmons, and several of my new friends from the rehabilitation center, book club, and foundation joined me for a celebration of life and renewal. I had prepared a feast with dishes Martha had loved, her famous peach cobbler the centerpiece, and decorated the backyard with string lights that twinkled like stars as dusk fell. As we gathered on the patio, enjoying the early evening sunshine, Edward raised his glass in a toast to Harold, a man who showed us all the meaning of resilience, forgiveness, and moving forward with dignity. And to new beginnings, Emma added, which sometimes come disguised as painful endings. Detective Simmons joined in, to justice that brings healing rather than simply punishment. I looked around at these people who had become my chosen family, not bound by blood but by something perhaps stronger: choice, respect, and genuine care. Some I had known for decades, like Edward. Others had entered my life through the most traumatic experience imaginable. Together, they formed a tapestry of connection far richer than I could have imagined in my darkest days. "Thank you all for being part of my journey," I said, my voice steady with emotion. "If there's one lesson I've learned, it's that true family isn't always defined by DNA. It's defined by who stands beside you in your darkest moments, who celebrates your victories as their own, and who values you for exactly who you are." We shared stories long into the night, laughter echoing across the garden that had once been neglected, but now bloomed with life and color. I found myself sharing anecdotes from my childhood, memories of Martha, dreams for the Foundation's future, speaking with an openness that felt like another form of healing. Later, after the guests had departed and I sat alone on my porch swing, watching the final stars appear, I reflected on the strange path my life had taken. The betrayal that could have destroyed me had instead led to a richer, more authentic existence. I had lost a daughter but gained a community. I had faced mortality and emerged with a deeper appreciation for each day. At 65, I had discovered that life could begin again, that trust could be rebuilt, that purpose could be found in unexpected places. The hospital monitor that had once displayed a life-saving warning had become a metaphor for my journey, a sudden jarring alert that had ultimately guided me toward a better path. Some mornings I still woke with a start, momentarily gripped by the memory of betrayal. But these moments grew rarer as months passed. More often, I woke with a sense of anticipation for the day ahead, a board meeting at the Foundation, a new book to discuss, seeds to plant, lives to touch. My story had become not just one of survival, but of thriving in the aftermath of betrayal. The Martha Peterson Foundation now had a waiting list of seniors seeking to volunteer, eager to transform their own painful experiences into support for others. We had been featured in national media, sparking conversations about elder abuse and financial exploitation that had long been kept in shadows. As darkness settled fully and the first cool breeze of evening rustled through the garden, I whispered a silent thank you to Martha, whose love had sustained me even in her absence, and whose financial wisdom had ironically saved me from our daughter's deadly greed. I thanked Emma for her courage in sending that message, Edward for his unwavering friendship, and even, in some complex way, Rebecca, whose betrayal had ultimately led me to a life of greater meaning and connection than I had known before. Then I went inside, closed my door securely, and looked forward to tomorrow, not with fear or anxiety, but with the quiet confidence of a man who had faced the worst and found himself stronger than he ever imagined possible. Did you like my story? And which city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. If you like the story, you can support me by sending a super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this. Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story with love and respect. Did you like my story? And which city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. If you like the story, you can support me by sending a super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this. Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story with love and respect.